All right. Good evening, everyone. The meeting will come to order. Madam Clerk, would you please read the adequate notice of compliance statement?
Yes, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by the City Clerk's office in preparation of the public meeting notice dated November 25th, 2020, which was properly distributed and posted per statutory requirements.
Thank you. Could you please do the roll call, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Bowman?
Here.
Ms. Hairston?
Here.
Ms. Little?
Here.
Mr. Naidu?
Here.
Mr. O'Sullivan?
Here.
Mr. Vartan?
Present.
President Fox?
Here. Thank you. And now, if we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Now on to the notices regarding closed session and hearings and comments, Madam Clerk.
Yes. A closed session meeting as authorized by state statute was authorized and held prior to the start of this meeting, and the known items for discussion were listed on the published closed session agenda. Please be advised the council meetings are broadcast live on Comcast Channel 36 and Verizon Channel 30 and rebroadcast on Thursdays and Saturdays on HTTV on Comcast 36 and Verizon 33. This meeting is also being streamed live through YouTube. To view the meeting via YouTube, please visit the city website at cityofsummit.org and click on the YouTube icon at the top of the home page. While this meeting is being broadcast live and members of the governing body are participating remotely, steps have been put in place to accommodate public input during this meeting through public notice dated November 25th, 2020, which provided information for those wishing to participate during public comment periods at this council meeting. The City Clerk's office also provided through public notice instructions on how the public could submit a question or comment via email or regular first-class mail in advance of the meeting. Public comment will be permitted at specific times as outlined in the agenda. Please refrain from commenting until solicited by the council president. For those members of the public who wish to make a comment during a designated public comment period, please use the raise hand feature and you will be called upon by the council president. Unless you are using an electronic device to follow the meeting agenda or need it for professional emergency contact purposes, please turn it off. And lastly, we ask that all participants remain on mute unless called upon to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. And now on to reports. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Council President. So for some serious business, not that we don't all have serious business here, but nonetheless, the Westfield Regional Health Department is reporting a total of 215 positive cases of COVID-19 in Summit, New Jersey for the month of November 2020, and 734 total cases all in Summit since March 2020. This month is the single largest increase since the pandemic began. Early on, we did not have enough PPE or the knowledge that wearing a mask and maintaining a safe physical distance is effective in preventing the spread of coronavirus. Now we understand more about the virus and have it within our control to control it. I know it's difficult to stay apart from our friends and loved ones, but we need to do it. The Division of Public Works crews recently posted lawn signs with a wear a mask messaging. We hope this will remind people to follow CDC guidance and wear a face covering when out in public. If testing positive for COVID-19, please respond to contact tracers. In the month of November, contact tracers were unable to reach 38 patients and 6 people refused an interview or were uncooperative. This is not acceptable. We need to work together to help prevent the spread and inform others who may have been exposed. Thank you to our health department for their continuing work. We rely on you and appreciate your efforts on behalf of our community. Now, this is serious, everyone. I've been saying this for months. And I'm honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I'm kind of at my wit's end. We're smart in this town. We care for each other. We do so many things to take care of each other. We need to do this as well. This Sunday, from 3 to 6 on the Summit Village Green at 356 Broad Street. Join the Department of Community Programs for Summit's annual tree lighting, some holiday music, and have a socially distanced photo taken with Santa. Face coverings are mandatory. Registration is required, and only 25 people will be able to sign up for the 6 30-minute time slots. Go to summitcommunityprograms.com to register and for more information. I am proud to say that this year there will be a menorah on the Summit Village Green for the first time, beginning on December 13th at 6:30 p.m. I hope that next year we will be able to gather when the menorah is lit. The Department of Community Programs is asking people who like to decorate their homes for the holidays to enter its Holiday Lights contest by emailing dguida.jr@cityofsummit.org by December 4th. A map will be developed listing all participating homes and then given to residents to take a holiday lights tour. Vote online or at outdoor voting booths at Cornhusk Fieldhouse and the Summit Community Center. A first and second place winner will be selected each night and receive $50 and $20 Summit Downtown gift cards. This sounds like a lot of fun, and I hope people will decide to participate. And remember, this is holiday lights, not just Christmas lights. So everybody who wants to participate certainly can. Thank you, Council President. That's all I have.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And now on to Michael Rogers for the City Administrator's report. Michael?
Thank you, Council President. Good evening, everyone. As COVID-19 spread in the Summit community increases, all city office buildings are currently closed to the public. Citizens are asked to conduct all business remotely online or by calling or emailing departments. There is a staff directory on the city website at cityofsummit.org. The Department of Community Services counter, however, is open daily from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. for essential business of document drop-off and pickup only. A list of essential DCS services is available on the city website as well. We appreciate your patience during these challenging times. And lastly, the 2021 preliminary capital budget workshop of the Summit County Council will be held on Wednesday, December 9th at 6:30 p.m. by Zoom video conference and broadcast on the City of Summit YouTube channel. The public may participate in the meeting online or by telephone. More information is available on the city website. And that's all I have for this evening. Council President, thank you.
Thank you. And now for the Council President's report. The Summit Policemen's Benevolent Association, number 55, and the Firefighters Mutual Benevolent Association, number 54, are hosting the annual United States Marine Corps Reserve Toys for Tots Holiday Toy Drive, now through December 14th. Donations of new unwrapped toys can be dropped off at donation boxes at a number of Summit locations during normal business hours, now through December 14th. These locations are located on the city's website at cityofsummit.org. Face coverings are required to enter all locations, and donation drop-off is contactless. Second, the Union County Mobile Test Unit will be in New Providence this Thursday, December 3rd, to offer free COVID-19 walk-up tests. No appointment is required, and registration is done on site with a mobile phone or tablet. Results will be provided within 72 hours. More information is available at ucnj.org/walkup. And lastly, last night, Mayor Radist and members of the Common Council held the first of our 2 annual appointments meetings to appoint volunteer boards and committees. We will be meeting again in a few weeks to complete the review of applications, but it was wonderful to receive so many volunteer applications this year, many more than in previous years. And this enthusiasm is what makes Summit so special. I thank everyone for volunteering and to donate their time and talent to improving our community. So thank you all. And so now moving on, we are up to public comments. So I see we have a lot of people here tonight, and we have a full agenda. So I'm going to ask that everyone hold themselves to 3 minutes, and I'll be keeping an eye on the time. And this is for comments for items that are not on the agenda. And when I recognize you, please state your name and your address. And if you have a written comment, please provide it to the clerk at rlickatis@cityofsummit.org. So I'll take a look. And okay, we have Edward Grimes. Would you like to go ahead? I think you have to unmute yourself. Mr. Grimes? Mr. Grimes, can you hear me? You need to unmute yourself.
Are you okay?
Okay, that's better.
Yes, good evening. No, I'm talking about the cannabis issue tonight. That's on the
Okay.
agenda, so I'm going to
It
wait
is
for
on
that.
Right, so you can put your hand down, and when we get to that, I'll call on you then. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Council President, and good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Just a couple of sentences. I wanted to, first of all, thank the Mayor and thank Ms. Lickatees for obtaining the PowerPoint from JCP&L, and to alert Council that I've sent a proposed ordinance to Ms. Lickatees. The purpose of the ordinance is that short-term and medium-term, I think the solution to the power outage problem is going to be more aggressive vegetation management, and that's basically what the proposed ordinance addresses. And I understand that that will be referred to committee, and we'll hear shortly. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your interest, Mr. Bennett. Are there any other comments from members of the public on items not on the agenda? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I guess we will close the public comment period and we'll move on to the ordinances for hearing. All right, so first up, we have capital projects and community services. We have an ordinance, Councilmember Little, but first, Madam Clerk, could you read it, please? But you're muted.
Thank you, Council President. The first ordinance for hearing is number 20-3224, an ordinance to repeal and replace Chapter 35 of the General Code of the City of Summit to establish the 2020 Development Regulations Ordinance. Council President, I just want to allow our city planner to join our meeting here,
Of course.
so that if you have any questions, he's available for that.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Little, are you ready?
I am. Am I ready to go? Did you read it, Rosie?
I did. Okay,
I'm sorry. I was paying attention to the panelists joining us and got behind. As we've discussed at several of these meetings, this is the revised DRO ordinance, which is going to be a repeal and replace tonight. At the December 2019 meeting, you will recall that we passed a new DRO, which are our zoning ordinances, and those were a revision, a wholesale revision of the ordinances. And we wanted to pass them at that time, even though we knew that there were still some revisions and corrections that needed to be made because they were just a vast improvement on the old ones, and we wanted the city to be able to start working on them. In the meantime, after December, there was a subcommittee formed with myself and the planning board chair, William Anderson, Jay Brinkerhoff, another planning board member, and Krista Anderson and Tom Behrens from the city and our planner, who went over the ordinances and made corrections and made sure that the sections all were consistent and the language was consistent, and some changes were made. Since there were so many changes and small changes, but so many of them, and since some of the paging was renumbered, we are doing a full-scale repeal and replace, even though the actual substance of the ordinance is significantly similar to the one that was passed last year. I'm just going to point out some of the more significant changes so that council and the public are aware, and then I will move the ordinance for hearing. The first is that we defined the brewery and added breweries as a listed permitted principal use in the downtown area. And we we refined the preservation easement definition, and we also revised the dormer roof on the front facade allowance. So those are the more significant changes, and this is now a very thorough and well-read document, although it is a living document, and we will see amendments to these zoning ordinances over time. The planning board is going to undertake a quarterly review of the zoning ordinances and make any additions or changes as needed. So we will be seeing further amendments as this is a living document. But I would like to open this for hearing on this ordinance.
I second it.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments from members of council about this ordinance? Councilmember Naidoo.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank the planning board and the planning board consultants for doing this work, and Councilwoman Little. It's a lot of work that goes into looking at the DRO and looking through all the different issues that relate. I think sometimes we use acronyms and people don't understand exactly what they mean. So I'll do my best to define what a DRO is. It's the Development Regulations and Ordinances. These are the land use regulations that govern everything about how things should be constructed in town. We regulate, just as every other town does, the size of buildings, the type of size setbacks, sometimes with regard to lighting issues. There are a lot of facets to what is permitted and not permitted in town. And there's a reason for that. We take a lot of people look through these documents in order to figure out how best it is to make sure that we have a character and a nature of a town that suits our community. And it is a lot of work that the planning board has spent basically 2 years on, or more, in fact, going through this DRO, but it is a necessary work because it affects development through town for years on end. So thank you to all the hard work that's gone in to get us to this point.
Thank you, Councilmember Naidoo. Does anyone else have any comments from members of the council? Okay. Councilmember Hairston.
I just want to echo Councilman Naidoo's remarks that I know this was a huge effort, and members of the public, I know it's not fun reading, but this was my introduction to council last year in 2019 when Tom made that awesome presentation, and I was reading through it, and I know that it's only gotten better. And so I just wanted to echo thanks to everyone involved. And it really does shed light on how important and how seriously we take our town and all of the development within. So thank you all.
Okay, any other comments from members of council? Councilmember Bowman. You need to unmute.
So basically, I want to thank everybody. And as representative to the Historic Preservation Commission, I want to thank you for your definition on the easement. I mean, we have had a number of times in conversations at both the planning board as well as the historic preservation level. And, this gives us a lot more direction. And so we as the historic preservation, thank you for that. So that's, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public on the Development Regulations Ordinance? Okay. Go ahead. R. Walter.
Thank you. My name is Ralph Walter. I'm an architect. I do restoration work. I live immediately west of the area that's being proposed for rezoning as R10. I've lived here since.
Please.
I'm sorry?
Would you please state your address, Mr. Walter?
I'm sorry, yes, it's
That's okay.
609 Springfield Avenue,
Thank you.
corner of High Street.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
I'm an architect. I do restoration work. I was the architect for the restoration of Old Town Hall, for the restoration of the horse trough, for the restoration of the Reeves House at the Arboretum. I was the chairman for many years of the Historic Preservation Commission and was on the commission for some time before that. As I said, I've lived in Summit and lived immediately west of this area since 1984. After many years, the existing zoning of this group of houses on the north side of Springfield Avenue was changed to office residential character. The point of that, as I remember, was to preserve the buildings themselves, not the uses necessarily, but the buildings, because they were considered to contribute to the appearance and the atmosphere of Summit as you enter it from the west, as you enter the downtown central business district from the west. I'm quite concerned at the potential for undoing the intent of the office residential character zoning, which would presumably allow for removal of any of these existing buildings and replacement by something new, which is, even if it's residential, would destroy the houses that are there. Some of these, the house at 603 Springfield has been there since 1892 or 3. My house, which isn't included in the district, dates from 1887. There's one immediately east of St. John's Church that's earlier, but I understand that those two houses to the east of St. John's are not being rezoned and apparently will stay in a 2-building wide zone that's still office residential character. My bottom line, I suppose, in all of this is that I would very strongly recommend against this proposed rezoning of the office residential character 1 zone in this case. And I thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Mr. Walter. Are there any other comments from members of the public? Diane?
Thank you, Marjorie. I live at 606 Springfield Avenue.
And if you could state your full name for the record.
Oh, Diane Leotis.
I figured as much. Good to see you.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is probably just Diane on the
Exactly.
I live at 606 Springfield Avenue, and I am directly across the street from the zone that has been ROC 1. As much as I, was hoping that the homes would have been preserved, the ones that were, the older homes that was historic, it actually has not worked out that way at all. Anyone that has purchased these homes has come in there with the idea of building, there's multiple properties on, townhomes on these properties. I mean, we've had so many planning board meetings and the properties have changed hands. Especially the one directly across the street at 603 has changed hands 7 times since this ORC 1 zone was developed. And it was never done in a sense that was going to be saving the home to look as it would have when it was built in the late 1800s. The home that was at 605 Springfield Avenue was torn down and a new structure was put up. And the other, the Dutch colonials, I don't think that there's anything that's, historic about them that specifically that this zone was speaking to and saying that it was going to preserve these 2 Dutch colonial homes. So I don't know if this zoning is going to still allow the homeowner for the property owner of 603 Springfield Avenue to go ahead with the plans that were approved for him to allow to build the 4 townhomes on that property. If this zone is changed back to the R10, is he grandfathered in with the plans that were approved? And I think they were approved probably about 4 years ago, and nobody has built on those plans. Do you know anything about that? Whether, if it returns to R10, is he still, the current property owner, is he still allowed to build with the plans that were approved?
I believe the answer to that is yes, but I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Little or to our planner, Tom Behrens, too.
I'm gonna let Tom Behrens answer part of that question. I will say I kind of agree with both of the comments. I believe that certainly before my time, but I believe the intent of the ORC zone was to retain the character of that area, and it is. But what happened over time is exactly what Ms. Leota said, is that it didn't really work out that way, and so this was the topic of a lot of discussion among the planning board, and it was felt that this change would be more in character with the neighborhood and retaining that kind of character and residential character which exists in that neighborhood. And then I'm going to allow Mr. Behrens to speak further on that.
Great, thank you. So pertaining to the specific question about the site plan application for the parcel in question, to some degree, that site is still pending with respect to some structural issues with the house itself. So what will actually happen in the future remains unclear at this point. But what is clear is that the applicant, whether it was 1 or 2 years ago, did receive certain site plan approvals for the site, which can be maintained moving forward. However, if a new application is submitted to either the zoning board or the planning board, they would have to adhere to the new ordinance. So it's really up to the developer at this point whether or not they're going to move forward with their current approval or submit a new application to deal with any structural or other issues they might be having with the property. So at this point, we don't know what their plan or intent is, but those are the rules that they would have to adhere to.
Thank you.
I would like just to say that I am in favor of the R10 zone, because I would hate for anyone in this neighborhood to have to go through what we already have gone through with the properties and the changing of the zone and how much difficulty it has caused for this neighborhood.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Leotis.
Thank you so much.
Moving on with Melissa Spur. Go ahead. Okay, I think I got you there.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Melissa Spur. I live at 61 Woodland Avenue in Summit. I also would like to comment about the same change and understanding that the ORC zone perhaps did not serve its purpose and that it should, the zones should change with the times. My only concern is that the R10 zone doesn't adequately address the preservation of character, which is so prevalent to the ORC zone and also in the master plan of 2016. And so I just wanted to understand how council or planning intends to address the preservation of character, not just perhaps, the building square footage in relation to the lot size. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. Tom, would you like to take that one, please?
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in. Perhaps I can answer this question and some future questions regarding this zone. So certainly some people on this meeting have been involved in Summit much longer than I have, but I've been involved in town for probably since 2014 or so. And certainly throughout this process in developing the 2019 and now the 2020 DRO. So with respect to the existing ORC1 zone designation in question, my understanding is that when this zone was created 10 or 20 years ago, let's say, it was primarily created to address one single parcel and to preserve that particular house, which is the westerlymost property within that string of 7 lots on Springfield Avenue. And that house had actually been demolished and reconstructed as a single-family home. So other than that parcel, the remaining 6 lots are developed with, we'll call it 3 homes, which may be older, but not necessarily exhibiting any, historic architectural features that really stand out as worth preserving. And I know that's somewhat subjective, so I don't mean to be offensive. Then you have a church that occupies 1 parcel. Then you have 2 additional parcels that are the easterlymost parcels, which are going to remain in the ORC1 zone. So other than the house that was demolished, the church, and the 2 parcels remaining in the ORC1 zone, we're talking about 3 parcels that will really be affected in this proposed rezoning going from ORC1 to R10. Today, as the ORC1 zone is written, you can actually demolish those dwellings and construct a single family dwelling. You're able to do that today and have been able to do that for the last 10 or so years when the zone was developed. There were certain incentives that were created that allowed a prospective developer to maintain the home and use it for a mix of uses, such as a dentist's office or other type of non-residential use. And as it turned out, those incentives hadn't worked as intended. And so it's come to light that the city now wants to reconsider the zoning of those 5 parcels in question, and that they'd be more appropriate to be developed in the future under the R10 zone designation. And again, the 3 parcels in question, while there may be some differing opinions on the merit of their attributes warranting historic preservation, it was determined that ultimately what would be best for the town and the neighborhood would be to have those parcels zoned within the R10 zone for single family development. So I hope that answers some of the questions.
Thank you. This is Melissa again. Thank you, Mr. Behrens. I think that answers one question, and the other, I guess, follow-up would be, my understanding was that in the ORC, if you demolished one of those structures, the building that was put up in its place would need to retain that character in conjunction with the remainder of that area, and which is appropriate to kind of the Summit architectural landscape, whereas the R10 would not have that similar requirement?
The only language that I recall with pertaining to the existing ORC1 language, and I could look it up if need be, talks about maintaining the existing dwelling for a mix of uses. I'm not sure that it pertains to demolished structures, that once you would demo a house and were to reconstruct a new single family, that you necessarily have to adhere to that. I could be wrong, but I believe that was the distinction. And certainly this new DRO does have some design criteria that's applied citywide and is intended to promote design features that are emblematic or characteristic of the city of Summit.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments for members of the public on this ordinance? Okay, RP Brown. Go ahead.
Hello, this is Ryan Brown. I'm here with Rebecca Brown. We live at 584 Springfield Avenue, and we've been residents here for 13 years. And we're also concerned about how the changes in the ordinance that we're discussing today would change the character of the neighborhood. I think we share a lot of the same concerns that our neighbors do and that have already been addressed in this meeting, but it's come to our attention that we may be moving closer to a very dramatic change in the neighborhood, one that I don't think that from an infrastructure perspective, we would be that ready for. And from a home value property, everybody's concerned about. And to be frank, I think a lot of people are scared about what these changes could mean and how they're going to change our neighborhood.
Okay, thank you for your comment. I think we've covered most of this, unless Councilmember Little or Mr. Barron, do you have anything else to add on this?
I would just state again, based on the homeowner's concern that was just raised, that the distinction here is, again, the current zoning designation allows for a variety of uses, including single-family homes and mix of uses. What we're talking about now is actually a more scaled-down development alternative that would be allowed, namely that only single-family development or single-family houses would be allowed, again, on these 3 or 5 parcels in question. So in terms of, some alternative about, the development being overwhelming or not, it's actually the opposite, that the intent was to minimize the scale of what could be built there, recognizing the surrounding development pattern. So I think the city's goal was actually to adhere to the concerns of the neighborhood over the past few years from prior development applications with the zoning and planning board. Thank you.
And I would agree with that.
Are there any other comments from members of the public? Okay, any comments from members of council? Councilmember Naidu.
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to echo what Tom and Beth just said about the city trying to address. I was on the planning board at the time when the issue of the development, and Diane will remember this clearly, when the issue of the development on Springfield Avenue came in. In fact, it came 3 times, I believe, in front of the planning board. We went back and forth. And during that time, my recollection, and maybe it's faulty now over periods of years that have gone by, but a lot of the residents in that neighborhood were very frustrated because the ORC zone did not do exactly what they had thought it was supposed to do, which was to preserve the character of the neighborhood and preserve a feeling of a residential neighborhood in a transition. And instead, it seemed like it was going to be allowing a much larger construction. And finally, the planning board made the decision that it ultimately did, notwithstanding a fair amount of objections about it. So I guess the last point Mr. Brown was making, I think what he's talking about is maybe the new construction that may happen in that area, as Diane pointed out, has not occurred in the last 4 years. I assume that's what he's referring to, but I'm not sure. But if that is the case, that's because of what it had been, the zoning regulation at that time, not what's being proposed now, if I'm understanding correctly.
I think you are, Councilmember Naidu, and actually I was on the planning board last year when we heard that the last application, and it was sort of a frustration that the ORC did not prevent, would allow something larger than what we thought really belonged in that neighborhood. So I think this is actually a really good solution to what ended up happening on that piece of property. So I think I also want to thank the planning board for all the work they've done on this, the redraft of this ordinance. We spent a lot of time last year working on it, and and it's still, I think, benefits from another round of revisions. And I think, residents should know that it's not an accident why our community looks the way it does. We have a lot of very skilled professionals and also skilled volunteers working on this and thinking about these issues. And, a lot of the things that make Summit as charming as it is are not by accident. It's intentional. And so I'd like to thank everyone who's contributed to that. So with that, if there are no other comments, I think we can move on to closing this hearing. Let's see. All right, so I'm declaring this hearing closed. We'll move on to the next hearing. The next ordinance for hearing. Madam Clerk, could you please read the ordinance?
And ordinance number 20-3225, an ordinance amending and supplementing the code of the City of Summit, Chapter 35, Development Regulations, Ordinance Article 7, Definitions, subsection 35-7.2, to add the definition of medical marijuana dispensary, and Article 9, General Provisions, subsection 35-9.2, prohibited uses.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilmember Naidu?
Thank you, Council President. I'd like to introduce this ordinance for hearing. And with your permission, Council President, I have a few comments that I would like to make after Councilman O'Sullivan seconds it. So this way we can give context to both council and the public as to the reasons for this ordinance.
Certainly. Go ahead.
Thanks.
Second it.
Okay. I want to share with everyone why the Administrative Committee is proposing this ordinance and what it does and what it does not do. First, let's start with what it doesn't do. This ordinance does not impact individual behavior. What folks do with respect to the use of marijuana in their own homes is not impacted. Also, medical marijuana dispensaries are allowed, or the purchase of medical marijuana is allowed. This ordinance deals with whether or not we should permit recreational marijuana commercial establishments in any business district, including neighborhood business districts, in our town at the present time. As our legal counsel advised us, the time of application rule governs where a business can go. So under our current DRO, these development regulations and ordinances that we were just discussing, there's no restriction as to the location of a recreational marijuana store. Therefore, if an application were to be made currently to place such a store in the central retail business district or in any particular neighborhood business district, then we would not be able to prohibit it. Voting for this ordinance gives us breathing room to consider what we want. It gives us an opportunity to see what happens in other towns. It gives us an opportunity to see how it will be implemented in other towns. It gives us an opportunity to discuss with our residents as to what they want. In short, it is the cautious approach. And we would urge you to adopt a cautious approach. As we are all aware, a person's home is likely their largest assets. We on council have an obligation to make sure that we do not take actions that will reduce the value of homes. We cannot tell you definitively if having a recreational marijuana store on, for example, Springfield Avenue will increase or decrease value. No one can. But we are not willing to take the risk with the value of our or our neighbors' homes without thoughtful and extensive dialogue with the community, which we have not had to date. I want to also address some of the arguments that we considered in the committee. First, aren't we foregoing revenue? We don't know. The state legislature is still negotiating what will happen. I think many people have heard of a 2% revenue coming back to municipalities. They have wrongly assumed that this is the current law. The legislature has not made any decisions. Let me be clear. We do not know what the legislature will do, nor do we know if that entire 2% will go to the municipality or, like property taxes, where the city collects the funds, but then has to redistribute it to schools in the county, will be the formula. We also don't know if there are any additional costs that may offset any tax revenue. Second, aren't you ignoring the will of the people? We don't think so. The referendum that was approved both legalized the sale of recreational marijuana and decriminalized its use and possession for people over 21. One could vote in favor because one could look at the disproportionate impact of criminalization has had on minority communities and say that is wrong, and thus vote in favor of referendum 1. One should remember that the state legislature first tried to pass bills that only legalized sales without addressing criminal justice reform, and those efforts failed. It was only after they included decriminalization was the referendum bill passed through the state legislature and then subsequently voted on by the public. But more importantly, we need to have a real conversation with Summit residents as to what they would like to see in their own town. Third, why can't we limit the store to certain locations in the town? We looked at this option. For example, if we were to prohibit sales within 1,000 feet of a school or a house of worship, then there would be certain neighborhood districts that could allow for it. However, we didn't think it was fair to residents in those neighborhoods, such as the eastern part of Summit, to have a store while other neighborhoods do not. If we are one town, then we should not burden only one section of the town with any particular business. That would not be fair. Fourth, why are we okay with the sale of alcohol and tobacco, but not with marijuana? We are not making a judgment call about what one should or should not ingest or smoke here. We are considering whether to permit a new use in town. Even if the answer is yes, that we want such a use, how do we regulate it? What type of regulation should we have? In order to be able to come up with a rational set of regulations, we need to have the time to go through a proper process of thinking through the issues. Let me close by saying, I'm not trying to challenge or change anyone's view. Reasonable people can come to alternative conclusions. What I want to do is to highlight how this community came to its conclusion. Change always happens in a community. Nothing is static. However, taking a cautious and thoughtful approach is not a bad thing. Learning from what others are experiencing and getting to know what they do is a useful exercise. Getting to know all of the facts is important. And having a community that is fully engaged in a thoughtful approach is essential. Until we are there, I would urge council to adopt this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Naidu. Do any other members of council have comments? Councilmember O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Council President. And thank you, Councilman Naidu. That was very well said. I would like to add a few points and just echo what you were just talking about. We've been in discussions in committee since early this year about this potential ballot measure. The first thing I just want to say is we still don't know what this final bill is going to look like when Governor Murphy signs it into law. There is talk about the 2% tax that would go to municipalities, but it would be optional. A neighboring town can choose not to impose the 2% city tax. So this legislation in its current form is pitting town versus town. We don't know what the costs are going to be, but there will be costs. We on council already wring our hands over adding headcount to city staff. This law will compel us to add staff over a number of departments for oversight, licensing, permitting, never mind additional burdens on our health department during a pandemic. There is no guarantee that this headcount would quote unquote pay for itself. And one other note on the 2% municipal tax, and this goes to the ever-changing nature of this legislation. Fanwood's mayor, Colleen Marr, recently said, as recently as 2 weeks ago, that there was some backpedaling in Trenton on giving municipalities this 2% excise tax. And that alarms her. And if that alarms her, that alarms me. There will be growing pains for any community that rushes into this. And I agree with Councilman Naidu that proceeding cautiously is the most prudent approach. We don't know what we don't know. There will be plenty of time to see how this law affects our neighboring communities. And if it's a great success and this new industry adds value, then there will come a time to amend our ordinance.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Sullivan. Councilmember Little.
Thank you. I also am going to vote in favor of this ordinance, although I had some, definitely some back and forth with myself. And for me, I want to stress that this is not a vote to is not a vote for not ever allowing the retail sale, but it is a vote for not yet. It kind of an echo of what Councilmember Member Naidu and Council Members O'Sullivan said. I also want to say that I've been watching this issue very closely over the last few years, and I've attended a number of sessions and seminars, webinars on this issue, both at the American Planning Conference, the Municipal League Conference, and some independent areas. And I attended a number of sessions last week, recently at the League Conference on the marijuana legislation. And I will say that the towns that seem to be going forward and that I noticed that we're going forward with allowing the retail sales were towns where there had been a great deal of community involvement over the last few years, seeing that this legislation was coming, and that they had groups in their community who had been working hard on figuring out what the retail sale would look like in their community, holding public meetings, meeting with potential retailers and licensees, working through the details of how they were going to allow it, what it was going to look like, and what was going to happen in their town. So there had been a lot of work done in the years leading up to this legislation. Those were the towns that seemed to be going forward with allowing it. That, for whatever reason, has not been done here in Summit. I hope that that there will be some involvement to look into these issues and to see if it's something that we want to allow, and if so, how we want to allow it. But I'm going to vote yes on this ordinance for the same reasons that Councilmember Naidu and O'Sullivan said, because we just don't have enough information on what the final legislation is going to look like at Trenton, and we haven't done the necessary work with the community to see what it would look like here in Summit.
Thank you, Councilmember Little. Did someone, Councilmember Vartan.
Thank you, Council President. The recreational use of marijuana, alcohol, tobacco, or other drugs have the potential to cause harm to the people who misuse or abuse them. When looking to states that have previously legalized marijuana, the data tells a troubling story of increased motor vehicle accidents, increased hospitalizations due to accidental ingestion among children and pets, and increased use of the drug in public. I believe drug abuse is one of the most serious problems facing our nation. I'm supportive of the Summit Police Department's DARE program, the Summit Elks Lodge, Shaping Summit Together, and the various other groups that discourage the use of all drugs, especially among children. However, an overwhelming majority of voters, both in the state of New Jersey and in the city of Summit, have decided recreational marijuana should be legal. While it is true that marijuana use poses a threat to those who consume it, so does alcohol, so does tobacco. According to the CDC, there are more than 95,000 deaths related to alcohol abuse and more than 480,000 deaths related to tobacco use every single year in the United States. Despite those staggering facts, Summit still has more than a half dozen liquor stores and one store that exclusively sells tobacco. Those businesses exist to operate and thrive in our city. As a matter of fact, this council voted last year to decrease the space required between liquor stores in the downtown. And this council will vote in just a few minutes on a development regulations ordinance that expands the definition of a brewery to be allowed in the downtown. Marijuana is not more harmful than these other industries that we welcome with open arms. I know for many people who voted yes on the ballot question but oppose marijuana business in Summit, this is less a moral question and more a practical matter. I understand that position and share many of the same concerns. But as is the case for all other businesses in Summit, in order to afford the rent, someone would need to create a space that is attractive. As is the case for other businesses with age restrictions, children would not be able to enter. As is the case for any other business that people want to patronize, people will want to park near it. Just like alcohol, public consumption of marijuana will still be illegal. I'm sure we may experience people flouting those rules. I feel very confident in our spectacular police department to rise to those enforcement challenges. The regulatory framework for the state is also not yet determined. That's true. We don't know how licensing will work, and there are certainly areas of town where we wouldn't want to have a retail store, and there are certainly areas of town where we might not want to have a production or distribution facility. The idea that it would definitely wind up in a neighborhood business district is not a foregone conclusion. I believe having the difficult conversations about updating our regulations should be happening now, and that would be better than the blanket ban that is being voted on this evening. Finally, there are only two ways for a municipal government to get more annual revenue: residential tax increases or commercial tax increases. In the midst of a global pandemic with severe consequences for municipal finances, I do not think this is the time to close the door on an entire industry that will provide additional commercial tax revenue, even if we don't know exactly how much it is. For these reasons, I'm voting against this ordinance. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments from members of council, or should I, if not, we can come back to members of council, but I'd like to let the public have their comments. We have a lot of, so I'm going to start, I'll just go down the list, and I'm going to ask you to state your name and your address, and I'm going to hold everyone strictly to 3 minutes because it's getting late and we have a long list of attendees here who'd like to comment. So first person is Jamie Van Siver. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Go ahead.
Yes, good evening. We're just doing audio, no video.
Okay. Please state.
I'm asking. Can you hear me or no?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead and state your name and address, please.
People will just be on audio?
Yes, they can hear you.
Okay, Jamie Van Sciver, 427 Greenwich Ave, Paulsboro, New Jersey.
Okay.
I actually am a medical cannabis patient. I'm scared to think that you're banning this in the community. I'm not really sure if you're familiar with how alcohol works in the system and the anatomy and physiology of the endocannabinoid system in the human body. It's a fact. It's there just as much as your respiratory system, cardiovascular system. I don't really see where it's like helpful to decide that people in the community can have access to a toxin, but not something that would nourish a very present piece of their anatomy in their body.
Okay, thank you for your comment.
You talk about that you want to make an informed and educated decision, that you're kind of looking around at other places as models. Well, then why do you want to put this on the table right now? There's nothing on the table. Why ban it? You talk about where would money come in to cover costs that the community may endure. Talk to the grow facilities or the dispensaries that may approach you that want to come into your community. Let them pitch you how they're going to cover costs. That shouldn't be on the backs of people having access to things. Think about the people in the community that have cancer, that are veterans, that have PTSD, that have chronic and terminal illnesses. Like, why make them have to travel further? Cannabis has never killed a single person in history at all, ever. But like all these pharmaceuticals, like, did you guys vote with everyone when all these, drug shops or narcotic shops or Walgreens, Rite Aid, what do you guys have? That's what's killing everyone. The controlled substances, the narcotics, the fentanyl and the oxy, and the cannabis is nourishing a body and a system in our bodies. And you're deciding that all these disgusting pollutants are okay, but you're going to make that inaccessible for people in your community. I travel between your area quite frequently. So I have to go even further to find somewhere that may have access because you're banning it when nothing's even on the table. You want to make an informed and educated decision, then take the time and do that. You're banning it and you're saying you're looking around at other role models, and why ban it? Nothing's on the table. Educate yourselves. Have some empathy for people in your community. Why are you making them travel further? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. So just to clarify, we are not, this ordinance has nothing to do with medical marijuana dispensary.
Okay, but to clarify as well, I think that all use is medical. I would like for you to look into the anatomy of the human body. You have an endocannabinoid system. We used to get nourishments of our system when this would grow wild and livestock would eat it. And then we would in turn ingest maybe the dairy and the meat.
Mrs. Fence-Iver, I'm going to cut you off now because you've gone well over your 3 minutes. We need to take the next comment, but thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And moving on, Patrick Duff, go ahead.
How you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. First, let me say thank you all for your service of being.
Your address for us first.
Yeah, 210 7th Avenue in Haddon Heights, New Jersey. But I've lived literally all across the country. Lived in California for 10 years and owned some of the first medical marijuana dispensaries in the country. From 2004 to 2010, I opened and operated 7 different dispensaries. And I can assure you every single one that I open and operate made the community in which they operated better, brought the people together. And as I look at the faces upon this Zoom meeting, I will say that several of you people have used cannabis in your life, and hundreds, if not thousands, of your community members use cannabis. So the fact that you are, voting on this to basically deny something that's already alive and well in your community. There's already several weed men in your community that sell marijuana. There's already, like I said, several hundred, if not thousands, of people that utilize this substance. I look at it like a brewery. There's a little town near me called Oak Lynn that opened a brewery called Tonewood Brewery. And it literally has become a hub of the community for people to come together, local small businesses, business members. So, I mean, it's sadly what I think is happening is people are enforcing a stigma that was created almost 100 years ago in a campaign to create a fear about what cannabis does and what cannabis users will do. And I think the truth is that, as you had mentioned, that 480,000 people die every year from tobacco products, and almost 100,000 die directly from alcohol use. But there's been 0 people that have died in 15,000 years of usage of cannabis. So I don't know what exactly you're protecting your community from, other than reversing a stigma that has created the largest prison industrial complex in the world that's mostly filled with Black and brown people for this stigma and the laws that were created against it. So your city, it's actually, there's a 1,347 times higher chance for a Black person to have a use of force used on them in your city by your police than a white person. So if social justice is ever to really be just, cannabis should just be available like alcohol, and arrests should be eliminated completely across the board, because the S-21 bill that you're discussing that's not been passed yet doesn't make marijuana legal. It only makes state purchased cannabis legal. And that's just wrong. And I just want you to reconsider and maybe table this bill, put it on the table until any rules and regulations, which might take another year, considering the fact that the New Jersey legislature already had the right to vote on this, but they couldn't get a bill passed for the last 3 years. So they stuck it on the plate of the New Jersey voters, who 67% have said they wanted. So maybe take a poll of your own town and please table this bill until an actual urgency situation presents itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duff. Moving on, Annette Dwyer. Go ahead, Ms. Dwyer.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Annette Dwyer, and I live at 116 Maple Street in Summit. Thank you, Council President Fox. Thank you, Mayor Radist, and all Common Council members for the opportunity to provide public comment on the proposed ordinance to ban cultivation, sale, and distribution of cannabis in Summit. I am speaking to you as a community member to support this ordinance and the language used by both Mayor Radist and Councilman David Naidu describing the City of Summit's position on this topic. That language being a proposed ban on the cultivation, sale, and distribution of cannabis, and separately, that decriminalization of the use and/or abuse is a separate set of issues and opportunities than the word legalization implies. My reasons for support of this ordinance are not fully researched, nor can I cite statistics. All I can do at this time is say the following. 1, in the absence of Common Council's proposed ordinance, there could be exponential risks of propagation of cannabis in our midst in terms of product, device, and usage by persons for recreational purposes, including by persons at a developmentally young age. 2, in the absence of this proposed ordinance, there could be decisions made at the property owner and tenant level, residential and/or commercial, to house and enable the cultivation, sale, and distribution of cannabis, and without regulation or oversight, the risks and dangers to stakeholders of our community could be difficult to reverse and severe in consequence from a public health standpoint. 3, in the absence of this proposed ordinance, there could be widespread use and abuse of cannabis in schools, community gathering places, homes, and neighborhoods as a whole, which would have no recourse for monitoring, controlling, and issuing consequences for behaviors emanating from the influence of cannabis in the body. This proposed ordinance to ban cultivation, sale, and distribution of cannabis enables city government and its agencies to fully monitor and engage in the management of statewide legislation implications on a local level, and to study and develop consequences for use and/or abuse of the substance wherever the source, as it impacts our locale. Therefore, my comments suggest that the proposed ordinance to ban the cultivation, sale, and distribution of cannabis in Summit is a fitting early action to anticipate the behavioral forces known and unknown which will ensue as a result of the recent New Jersey legislation around cannabis. I am speaking to you tonight as a community member, but I also wish to state for the record that I serve as the chair of Shaping Summit Together, which fulfills the mission of the Summit Municipal Alliance to prevent substance abuse, and whose stakeholders are youth and families, as well as grassroots community members. While Shaping Summit Together does not have an official position statement at this time, I am speaking on behalf of the protection of youth and families and the potential for this legislation to compromise the well-being of youth and families in their development of safe and healthy choices throughout their lives. Safe and healthy choices cannot be regulated by a cutoff date of 18 or 21 or any age. It requires parental involvement and community support from the very early stages of development all the way to adulthood. We have seen played out in vaping and e-cigarettes the market-driven promotion to youth and people of all ages to engage in a substance administered by a device to cater to one population of people, namely smokers, to the evolving detriment of other populations of people based on ease of access. I refer you to a recent article in the New York Times dated last Tuesday, November 23rd, about teenage vaping for more details and stats on that. In the absence of the proposed ordinance to ban the cultivation, sale, and distribution of cannabis in Summit, we risk adding on to the already existing difficulties to motivate youth and families to prioritize healthy and safe choices for their lives. I will close my comments with this. Councilman Naidu's comments on the difference between decriminalization and legalization is both astute and spot on with how legislation needs to be parsed and fully developed to ensure that by solving one problem based on a weakness in a system, we do not, by lack of insight and equal intellect, open floodgates to problems around monitoring, regulating, and controlling an abuse of a substance, which is best left to the medical community and constructive intervention authorities. I respectfully submit my comments to the clerk via email in the morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Dwyer. Okay, so moving on, we've got Chris Almada. Go ahead. I think you need to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me? Hi, thank you for your time. Chris Almada from Dover, New Jersey. My address is 259 Mount Hope Avenue. I'm a medical patient. There's a couple things that kind of blow my mind a little bit. You guys speak about the general people and so concerned about the people, but nobody stops to think about a person in a wheelchair or a cancer patient trying to get what they need. You guys I heard about commercials being spread with alcohol and cigarettes. Meanwhile, we have alcohol sponsoring sports. It's everywhere, regardless. And another thing is, no matter what, you guys are trying to ban something that is going to sooner or later be another topic again. It's going to come back up. In recreationally, medicinally, in every way. I don't see how you guys will be putting out a lot of costs. I just don't like it. Just can't even. I don't have the words of describing how it's just. I'm just mind blown. Can't even say it. The cigarette topic and alcohol topic and commercials and being exposed to children, and you guys are worried about it with marijuana, cannabis. It's it's just I don't. It's legal in other states. They're it's not like it's a. There will be commercials out, and in states that are illegal, they're not running commercials or making it, for the kids or what you guys are worried about promoting to people on school grounds. There's ordinances, there's things to be put in place. I also don't think you guys are reaching out to actually educate yourselves. You guys are just saying no and saying you guys don't know, but are you guys looking into any of these taxes, or have you guys been looking into it? Have you guys been talking to the people of Summit about it? I'm sure it's not a topic that's just new. I'm sure you guys been dealing with it on the medical side as well.
Mr. Omar, your time is up.
I believe you guys should just table it instead of banning it. Thank you.
Thank you. So just a reminder that medical marijuana is not restricted and is, that is permissible under the zoning ordinance. And I also wanted to explain, there have been a few people who've asked, why are we doing this now? Have we looked into these things? The point that Councilmember Naidu made is that at this point, we don't have legislation. We don't know what the operating rules are going to be when the legislature finally agrees to something. In fact, the legislature doesn't know what they're coming up with. I read an article in NJCOM yesterday or today with, interviewing the state senator, Scutari, who was not able to answer what it was going to look like. And he's the person who sponsored this bill. So the reason we are acting now is because if we don't act now, someone come in, seek approval under our existing ordinance and be able to cite a facility before we're even able to get input from the community and to figure it out how to address the concerns. I've heard from residents saying things like, well, we can just make sure it's nice and high end and it looks like it fits in Summit. But there's no way to do that without understanding what the rules are and what the outline of the regulatory system is. So I just wanted to mention that. And we'll move on with comments. I see Gio Shea is here. Go ahead, Gio. To get input from the community and to figure it out. I'm sorry, can you, I guess, is this Christina instead? Could you state your name and address, please? Go ahead, is this Gio? Go ahead. You need to unmute.
Between the Zoom meeting and the TV.
Oh, wait, can you start from the beginning? I think we didn't hear you, so please state your name and address.
Yes, my name is Giovanni Shea, and I live at 28 Glenside Avenue in Summit. And I want to just, to make a brief comment on this ordinance that you guys are presenting to prohibit the sales of recreational marijuana in Summit. The main point is that I find it a little hypocritical. I don't have the numbers with me, but I understood that Summit citizens voted, specifically the Summit ballots, voted to allow the legal consumption of recreational marijuana. And that, imply that marijuana should be able to be sold to the public for whoever is 21 years old and over. So I find it a little hypocritical that we agree, on a cultural change to move forward on some of the injustice on different type of communities. But then we say, yes, we want to decriminalize marijuana, but not in my town. So that really struck me. If we think that the majority of Summit citizens has voted to allow recreational marijuana, we should allow it, even in our town. And the last comment, I also heard some of the council members saying that let's see what happens first in other towns. That also I find it fairly hypocritical. If every town was doing the same, there was nowhere to start. And so why are we special to wait and see what happens first in other communities and towns? That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Chris Velasquez, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you for having this Zoom meeting and having the public comment. I'm from Dover, New Jersey, and I'm also a medical marijuana patient. I understand this ordinance doesn't affect medical marijuana. So I think we should definitely table this ordinance and maybe zone an area to allow a medical marijuana dispensary. I mean, if you guys don't want a recreational dispensary in your town, you need to at least allow a medical marijuana dispensary, because there's people in your town that smoke it recreationally and medically. And I don't know if you're familiar with the medical marijuana program in New Jersey, but right now we need to travel very far to get our medicine. I think if you vote yes on this, you're voting for reefer madness, frankly. You guys need to do more research, but there's been tons of research, and the people of New Jersey have spoken. And the people of Summit, maybe you haven't heard from them because you would probably arrest them. And that's why us medical marijuana patients need to come out and talk for the people that can't. Because I guarantee you there's people, your neighbors, that would love to go buy medical marijuana or recreational marijuana in their town. And this would create jobs for people in Summit. This whole meeting sounds like not in my back. Not you guys are for it. You guys don't for decriminalization. Okay, stop arresting people, but yeah, go buy it somewhere else. Yeah, not in my backyard. But guess what? We are already in your yard. 2/3 of New Jersey voted that we want to buy recreational marijuana. Okay, so another public safety. Have you guys talked to the dispensaries and asked about crime rates over there? It's what are you saving the public from? I don't understand. What we need is more education. Frankly, it sounds like you guys just want to make more room for breweries and have liquor stores closer together, apparently. So, I mean, that just sounds nuts. I'm pretty sure there's more domestic violence cases because of alcohol than because of marijuana. Some things I bring up to towns, I'm part of a Sativa Cross nonprofit organization. We fight for cannabis patient rights. Lots of towns in New Jersey, they want to, they want to ban the sales before it's even legal. I think maybe you guys should side with the people and the patients and support home cultivation rights. Because if patients had home cultivation rights, we wouldn't have to be coming on different Zoom meetings and talking to people, begging for them to sell us legal weed in their town.
Mr.
Okay.
Lopez, I'm going to cut you off now. Your 3 minutes
All right.
are
Thank
up.
you very
Okay,
much for
thank
letting
you
me
for your
speak.
comment.
And I hope you guys table this ordinance and at least make a zoning where you allow a medical marijuana dispensary. You guys should think of a place where you guys are going to put
Actually,
it.
we actually do allow medical marijuana dispensaries.
Have a zone where you want it to go, because it sounds like it's
allowed under our zoning law. There isn't a prohibition under our zoning law.
Okay.
That we have not disallowed it in any way.
Well, if you guys do pass the recreational ban, I would hope that you guys dedicate a zone for medical marijuana and make it a point that you guys are going to still serve.
Thank you. Councilmember Naidu, did you have something to say?
Yes, thank you. Because I think we've heard now multiple comments from folks who are not in Summit and may not have actually read our ordinance. And so therefore, they're very unclear of what we are saying. So let me clarify if you haven't read the ordinance. This ordinance specifically provides for medical marijuana. Okay, it provides for it in any business district. So that should be off the table. So if anyone wants to read and actually learn about what we are doing, I suggest they go to the City of Summit website, find our council agenda, read it, and then comment. We've now heard multiple people who clearly have not put in the time and effort as we have to think through the issues in our town. I'm slightly frustrated, as you can tell, because people are coming and as if they're reading talking points, and I understand their passion for the issue. That is precisely why, with regard to medical marijuana, because we care about our residents, because we understand the health issues, we specifically provide for it. So please read the ordinance.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to our next person, Ryan Felmet. Go ahead, Mr. Felmet. I think you need to unmute, Mr. Felmet.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It's a little, okay, sorry. No, I just had a couple points. I think a lot of the medical marijuana folks that are dialing.
Stop a second. Wait,
them,
Mr. Felmet. I need
speaking to.
I need you to state your name and address.
Mr. Felmet, you have to state your name and address.
For these folks and to be able to get it may be a frustrating one. So if I'm not familiar with where our medical marijuana dispensaries are set up in Summit, if at all, but it sounds like these people are going to some sort of link to get them. So I did read all of the ordinance stuff that was put out. I know that in 2018, a lot of municipalities put an ordinance against this type of thing. And that was when the state was trying to put it through as a matter of law, not as a matter of putting it on the vote for public opinion. And I think Councilmember Vartan made probably the best point in terms of the population has spoke of Summit, the state has spoken, and they made their decision. And this is the point in time where the elected officials who represent the constituents in which they serve have to take it to the next step and figure out a way to get it done and get it done safely. This isn't a new thing in the United States of America. It's not a new thing in the East Coast. It's been done in many other places. And we're citing other places and looking at other things that are going on in our area. I speak to a lot of other elected officials in municipalities, and even if they have voted no, or banned it in 2018 or prior to, they have said to me in direct emails that no matter what they've voted, their oath that I'm reading an email directly. My oath as an office is to comply with the law and carry out the wishes of my constituents. Summit needs to do the same. So I think this is something that we can handle. I don't think this is it's being made out. I think we need to educate ourselves, and we need to learn more. The urgency to do it now does not make a lot of sense to me. And I would table this discussion and have more meaningful meetings with the people in Summit who already voiced their concern once and voiced it on the ballot, and would be probably happily to sit down and group meetings and discuss this in more detail. And that's regardless of what you voted for and what's going on. I think it's just clear as day what needs to be done. Our home values will be fine, and life will go on. And it's not that this isn't a serious issue. It's just one that's been decided at the ballot box that needs to be taken in as a whole. And I think that we can get through it together. So I hope that the council takes this very, very seriously, as the callers and the speakers and the community already has in numerous ways. There's been many years leading up to this where New Jersey has signaled that this day would come.
Mr. Feldman, we're at 3 minutes.
Russian ordinance.
Mr. Feldman, you're at 3 minutes. I'm going to ask you to stop now.
Way to go about it. Thank you.
Thank you. And could you please state your address, please, for the clerk?
Oh, yeah, sorry. It's 57 Madison Ave.
Okay, thank you. All right.
And I sent in a written statement. Also, on the general topics, I sent in a written statement. I didn't realize it wouldn't be read, but
well, if you speak, we don't read the statement. It's one or the other. Okay.
Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So moving on, our next commenter, let's see, Hugh Giordano. Go ahead.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Please state your name and address. Actually, there's a lot of feedback. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Giordano.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Okay. Can you please state your name and address?
Yes, Hugh Giordano, 57 Argyle Avenue, Blackwood, New Jersey. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Today I'm representing the United Food and Commercial Workers Union, Local 152. The UFCW represents cannabis workers, both medical and adult use. And I'm here to stand against this ordinance to change the DRO to prohibit adult use, sales, cultivation, and all in between. We think, looking that 70% of Summit residents supported this, the working class has spoken. They said that they support the agenda of cannabis. There's also, I don't think that stands for the community policy of banning it. Does not stand for the community policy. The question of knowing about cannabis and what it will do to towns, there's already numerous states that have adult use. There's already numerous towns inside New Jersey that have medical. There has been proper time for council to investigate, visit dispensaries, and talk to mayors. The way that the medical and adult use retail establishments are ran are the same. It's the same security base. They hire police and veterans. Going into that, we believe that this is an attack on jobs, attack on the working class. Majority of your town is of working age, around 60%. These jobs create a living wage. Under the medical law and the New Jersey state law, which is being drafted, there are labor laws which will make sure that these jobs are unionized jobs, which come with good wages, medical benefits, dental, vision, and other union securities, so it can make a healthy and strong economic environment for Summit. One of the things that's interesting about Summit is that there's a huge disparity between male and female economic well-being, around 50,000, and it's gotten worse since the last census. This is a great way for your female working population to join the working middle class and to up their wages and benefits. These are highly skilled jobs, such as science and chemistry and horticulture. Even on the retail side, it's a business mindset. These are well-trained people. I also find it that having no retail establishment will make it more easy for the drug community to sell drugs in your community. Decriminalization will allow for that because they'll be able to have so much on them without penalty. Where a retail establishment, you have to be 21 years old, you have to have ID, those folks are trained, and since they're well trained and they're well treated economically, they won't be sending cannabis out the back door. The same thing as we represent alcohol workers as well. Distilleries, we don't see our members giving out alcohol to young kids because they get a good wage and benefit. Looking at it all, we believe that it is a mistake to pass this. You have an opportunity to sit down with the citizens of Summit. You have an opportunity to do Zoom meetings and town halls like other towns and cities around New Jersey have done before passing this. And the law also establishes, even though it's not passed, but it's going to replicate the medical world, that the town has an opportunity to ban it once the law is passed, and it gives you ample opportunity to do so. I think this is a prohibition and an anti-worker resolution, and I would ask that it be tabled until further review. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Giordano. Are there any other comments from members of the public? Okay. All right.
Council President?
Yes.
I need to report that there were several emails that were received for public comment this evening.
Okay. A few of the people are present here.
I recognize some of the names, yes. What I'd like to do is just tell you that there were approximately 28 emails, including Mr. Fellman, who submitted comments by the deadline today. Of those 28, one was in favor and 27 were opposed. And two additional emails were received after the deadline, one in favor and one opposed. If I may, just read one of the emails that are representative of similar comments for those who opposed, and read the one that was received before the deadline that's in favor. May I proceed?
Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. The first one in favor was, the only one in favor before the deadline was Gwen von Volkenberg of 60 Dale Drive. And she writes that, very briefly, that she wants to say that she agrees that Summit should ban the growth, sale, and distribution of marijuana in Summit. That one. The representative email from the opposition is Josie Coates of 80 Elm Street in Summit. And she writes the following. My name is Josephine Coates. I live at 80 Elm Street in Summit. I'm writing to you today to submit a public comment on the amendment of the development regulations ordinance pertaining to sale, growth, and distribution of recreational marijuana. I fervently believe having a dispensary in our town would benefit its residents. New Jersey residents from this town voted yes on the first ballot proposition, and voting on the ban on sale, growth, and distribution of marijuana at this time is too early. Given that there will be state taxes on the sale of recreational marijuana, if Summit decides to ban any business in that industry, will the city of Summit also refuse to accept any funding from the state that comes from recreational marijuana sales? People who wish to purchase marijuana from dispensaries, and there are people in Summit who will have to go to a nearby town to purchase it, and those local taxes will go to help support the other town. Not everyone has a car, and with COVID-19, public transportation is not as safe as it used to be. This is disenfranchising people who voted for safe and legal access to recreational marijuana. In addition, by not allowing growth of cannabis, this is making excessive demands upon people who are in pain or have other chronic ailments such as glaucoma to have to buy marijuana from dispensaries, which is a financial burden. For those who are concerned about the moral aspect of drugs in this community, make sure to acknowledge Merck and Celgene and Bristol Myers Squibb, who have been operating in this town for decades, synthesizing drugs and delivering them to the public. The city of Summit could be greatly improved by opening up a dispensary. Jobs would be created during this recession, and the town would have more diverse businesses than just the vast collection of liquor stores, nail salons, and pizza joints. Without a safe and legal way to access recreational marijuana by residents 21 years and older, a black market could develop and be extremely dangerous to the health of this community. The local tax on dispensary purchases could go towards drug education and addiction rehabilitation and help our communities safe from overdose and drug abuse. I urge the Common Council to not pass this ordinance. These similar sentiments were shared by the following people whose name and address will go into the record along with their written comment. Eduardo Henrique Chazat Agostino of 90 New England Avenue in Summit, Bella Anajar, 27 Webster Avenue Summit, Freddie Arellano, Springfield Avenue Summit, Pat Bauman, 40 Lewis Avenue Summit, James Bowe, 9 Crestview Court, Roseland, New Jersey, Yeliza Brenz, Orchard Street in Summit, Sam Carliner, 467 Valley Street in Maplewood, New Jersey, Laura Coates, 14 Lee Drive, Morristown, New Jersey, Alexa Diaz, 77 Broad Street Summit, Ria Diaz, 77 Broad Street Summit, Sarai Diaz, 77 Broad Street Summit, Ryan Fellman, 57 Madison, Jane Gala, 16 Van Dyke Place Summit, Christina Guo, 26 Hughes Place Summit, Christopher Helmer, address not provided, Jenna Kolnovic, 105 New England Avenue Summit, Kathleen Landis, 32 Sunset Drive Summit, Jeffrey Alexander Lopez, 2 Eaton Court Summit, Sophia Lasardi, 43 Canubrick Parkway Summit, Matthew Nicolini, 23 Montrose Avenue Summit, Reed Phillips, 9 Norwood Avenue Summit, Diego Pinzon, 13 Ascot Way Summit, Cameron Regner, address not provided, Ben Schachter, 7009 Alameda Road in Houston, Texas, Victor Torres, Surrey Road Summit, and Allie Westdyke, 27 Rotary Drive Summit. And that is all I have, Council President.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So we have a few more members of the public who have their hands raised. Joanne Zito, go ahead.
Hello.
Yes,
Can you hear me?
please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Joanne Zito. I'm at 188 Falmouth Avenue in Elmwood Park, New Jersey. Thank you for having this hearing, and I hope that you table this ordinance. I'm an advocate for medical cannabis and cannabis legalization with the Coalition for Medical Marijuana of New Jersey. Yes, as far as I'm happy that you have made space for medical cannabis retailers. I don't know, I share your frustration with the state government, the legislature, as far as how many ATCs or how many dispensaries will be just medical or for adult use. So it's hard to know anything right now. But just to address some of your concerns quickly, there is seen with legalization, first, the people in your community that do use cannabis would be happy. Most people that, there are many people that use cannabis but aren't registered medically to use it, but they still use it medically. A lot of people use it to stay off of harder drugs and alcohol. And there has been, with the pandemic, there has been an increase in opioid use and deaths. And that's one of my arguments with the state for allowing home cultivation for patients, is that access is extremely difficult for cannabis, not just because of the range in the state to get it, but the pricing. Many can't afford it. And to use, they allowed opioid use disorder to be a qualifying condition, but as far as the MAT programs go, with the stigma and the cost, it hasn't been implemented the way that it should. So I think even recreational cannabis has some effect on public health positively in that way. As far as home values, I was researching, and a real estate listing website had said that their research reveals the opposite is true as far as having dispensaries lower property taxes. It says on average, in states where recreational marijuana is legal, cities with retail dispensaries saw home values increase $22,888 more than cities where marijuana is illegal from 2014 to 2019. That's per a Cato Institute study. Homes closed to retail dispensaries within 0.01 miles increased the value approximately 8.4% compared to those further away. This affected.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up, please. Your 3 minutes are up.
Yeah, and I just did want to say that there should be, if this is implemented properly, there should be savings within for law enforcement of these laws. So if you would take that into account as well, and yes, table this until you have more information. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, are there any other comments from members of the public? I see Jeffrey Lopez. Mr. Lopez, you have already commented in writing. So unless you have something else to add, I'll give you a quick 30 seconds or so. But we've taken your written comments.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So you guys already read my.
Please.
Sure, Jeffrey Lopez, Tooten Court.
Yep.
So I've been following this issue very closely. I've been trying to advocate to really raise awareness, spread a conversation around about the issues that are going on. And obviously, we've seen over 30 people advocating for this ordinance not to pass. A lot of the members of the community urging you not to pass this. Something I didn't include in my letter is that, as a first responder into the town, I've seen firsthand the dangers of black market cannabis and, the debilitating nature that addiction can have. Having a dispensary in the town would not allow having a dispensary in our town would allow regulated cannabis in our community that would be safer than the black market that is already in our community. While this ordinance doesn't officially limit medical marijuana, it does limit access to recreational marijuana for medical reasons. Many people use cannabis in order to help with minor aches, muscle pains, and anxiety while not having a medical marijuana license. These licenses are pretty expensive and are usually not covered by insurance. So it puts a burden on the working class and people who can't afford to go to the doctor for these licenses. And additionally, if it's banned outright, then it'll affect the ability for private citizens to grow it in their own homes, which is not unlike, brewing it in your home with the way that the language is as it stands.
Okay, Mr. Lopez, I'm going to cut you off there, and I'm going to point out that this has nothing to do with growing marijuana at home, neither the ordinance, this ordinance or the ballot measure had anything to do with home growth of marijuana. So
sure, but it does say that it limits the growth in general. So I think that we should.
That is talking about the siting of commercial facilities. What we're talking about here, just to clarify, this is a land use ordinance. This has to do with citing retail facilities. Commercial growing facilities and commercial distribution facilities. It has nothing to do with growth of marijuana in your home, which is, to my understanding, not legal. And the ordinance and the ballot measure did nothing to do to address that issue. So okay. Thank you for your comment.
Sure. Thank you for the information. I appreciate it.
Okay. So any other comments from members of the public? Okay. Hearing none, I'm going to, let's see. I guess there is no one else commenting. So I'm going to loop back. And if there are any members of council who want to add anything, Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Council President. I've been listening for a while, and I appreciate everyone who came and spoke with us. I do, however, want to say that the folks who do not live in Summit, you don't know Summit. And I take offense personally as the mayor and the representative of the people of Summit that you assume that we do not work hard to be transparent and to spend a lot of time, not just the Summit Common Council, but every organization in this town spends an enormous amount of time getting community input, finding out what's best for our town. So while you may have statistics about the city of Summit, you do not know this community. This is, as Council Member Little said, this is a not yet vote. We need to make sure that we understand what the people of Summit really want, not just what they voted for at the ballot. Did they vote for decriminalization, or did they vote for the sale of marijuana in our town? I don't know. And we need to find out. And if we do not pass this ordinance tonight, once the bill is passed by our legislature, which who knows when that will happen? Who knows when they will what's going to be in that piece of legislation? Someone said, the people have spoken, the state has spoken. Well, the state hasn't spoken. The people have spoken. We need to find out what the state is thinking. There will be time, and we will make the absolute strong effort to find out what this community wants, to find out what's going on in other towns. And that's not a matter of seeing what's just happening in other towns. That's what we are called upon to do many, many times a week, which is to look at best practices. That's what we're going to do here. We're going to do what's right for the city of Summit and all the people who live in this town, the 22,000 people who live here. And I understand we've heard from about 40 people by both email and in person. Probably half live in Summit. We're talking about 20 people. Great. I'm really happy you were here tonight. I truly am. But we need to find out what the rest of the community feels, and that will take some time. And if we don't act on this legislation, on this ordinance tonight, we will be put in a position come January 1, if the legislature acts in time, that we'll have to take whatever comes our way, and we will not be able to regulate it. People in this community want things to be done carefully and cautiously with transparency, a lot of thought, and a lot of community input. So I think that council, I encourage you to pass this ordinance tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Does anyone else on council have any comments? Oh, yes. Councilmember Hairston, go ahead.
Thank you, Council President. And this has been a very interesting hearing. I want to ask our councilman a couple of questions. I wondered, in your deliberations with our chief of police, and I know he's right there, I could just ask him, but I'm very interested in what you heard. That was there anything good about it that you said it's why we will do the education program? Is there anything bad about it for our police to have to be concerned about? I'm interested in a little bit more of your plan to educate the community on this.
Go ahead, Councilmember Naidoo.
Thank you, Council President, through you. We at the Administrative Committee did not have a meeting with Chief Bartolotti about this issue, as the mayor properly pointed out. And I think also a lot of members of the public, I think their frustration is really directed at Trenton and the fact that Trenton has not given clear guidance on what is going to happen. We are taking, as I said in my opening statement, a cautionary approach. The kind of, let's first see where the dust settles and take a thoughtful approach towards it. We will certainly, once we know what Trenton is expecting and doing and how things will shake out, whether it's on the tax issue, the licensing issue, what other issues they need to deal with. And mind you, the folks at Trenton have had now months, if not years, to think through this. So people are frustrated. They should reach out to the folks who represent them in Trenton and say, what have you been doing on an issue that you decided to throw into the people's laps because you couldn't make a decision effectively, and now you're scrambling to figure things out? It's their responsibility. It's our responsibility, our fiduciary responsibility, I believe, as those of us in council and mayor, to represent our city. Mayor correctly points out, we've heard from a small group of residents, and we respect our own residents when they speak to us. We take it very seriously, their perspective, but what we need to have is a broader dialogue. Once we know what Trenton is doing, as we have done on less consequential issues in the sense of affecting only one portion of the town, such as the park line, we held workshops and we had hundreds of people show up. As we did with consequential issues such as the master plan, we held multiple workshops and we had multiple times where people had their ability to input. Until we know what the parameters are from Trenton, we cannot go to our own folks and say, hey, this is what's permissible. Now let's talk as adults and rational people. Where would you like to see it situated? What would you like to see it as restrictions associated? Is there hours? Is there anything? Is there parking requirements? Is there things that we need to think about that we haven't done? First, we need to get guidance from Trenton, and then we can engage when we did the park line, for example, we talked to our police chief, we talked to our fire chief, we talked to our DCS, we talked to other folks to get thoughtful comments. That's how this town, as I have served for 5 years, and most of you now have served for many years also, recognize that's how we do things. We want to get as much expertise and information as possible. What we did do here, and what I'll reiterate with regard to medical marijuana, because that's already provided for under the Compassionate Act. We don't want to hold it up. We don't want people to be suffering. We have no interest in that. Of course not. And many of the people from even outside our community who spoke were speaking to that issue. So let's put that to rest. If you read the ordinance, you would see it actually calls it specifically out, saying here's what's permitted. But the rest, as far as recreational, we need to have a dialogue with the community where people sit around or Zoom around, I guess now, and talk through the issues. And we go through, like we do on every issue, and have a rational, sensible dialogue with a highly engaged community that we have. We know our own community. We know how engaged they get about issues, and they need to have their input.
Did I hear
that
you
answers
say,
your question, Councilman?
No, Councilman, did I hear you say once Trenton lands, that's when we begin the community discussion?
Exactly. From my perspective, that's what I would propose to the rest of members of council, because amongst other things, for example, a lot of the discussion that went around and folks commenting on assumed, as I said in my opening statement, incorrectly because of media reports. It's unfortunate that sometimes people hear sound bites and think that must have passed, that must have been done. They're assuming that 2% will be given to municipalities. That is not the law. That wasn't in the referendum. If you look at the referendum, we all looked at the referendum when we voted. There's no reference to an exact percentage that will go to any particular town. And what we have heard is anywhere from 0 going to towns, and the state, because the state's dire financial straits that it is in, as most of municipalities are also or have issues because of COVID and so forth. And we recognize the state is going through troubles. We appreciate that. The state may say, hey, listen, we can't afford at this point in time. We're going to go ahead and take all of it. All right, that's one option. The other option is 2%. The other option is sharing. But once we have those parameters, we of course will reach out to the public.
So my other question, let me ask it a different way. And if I may, Council President, I asked if there was anything good that you saw in your findings about recreational marijuana. And I'll ask it a different way. Is there anything harmful for that you thought about for police in enforcing this? Is there anything that you deliberated on that you thought was of concern for the board?
I cannot speak to that issue because we did not go, we went into the land use and what do we need now to do in light of having a referendum passed, but without having any laws passed. And so we looked at it within the confines of that. We did not look into this broader, what are the societal impacts or police impacts and so forth.
So there's no enforcement. It would only be what comes before you, before the planning board.
What we're talking about right now is purely a land use issue. It is not a law enforcement issue. What we're voting on tonight is a land use issue of whether or not we will permit under our current DRO, because as I started off, our legal counsel, and I'll let Matt Jacoby explain time of application, maybe that would be also helpful to this discussion, the general concept, and because I don't want to butcher it. But essentially what it means is, and this is more also for the public, I know the members of council understand this, that essentially right now, as we sit here today, if we don't do anything, we simply get an application without any, it could be a high-end dispensary, it could be somebody else who's a fly-by-night operation. We don't know what we get. But because of what we are permitting, we're permitting anything and anywhere that's a business district. And that's not what we think our community would want us to do. Matt, do you want to address just go on the legal issue of the...
So several years ago, for many years, zoning applications, the law was that whatever ordinance was in place at the time of the zoning board voted, that was the effective law. So people would put in an application, a governing body could change their ordinance. And so once the vote was to be taken by the zoning board, whatever ordinance was in effect at the time of the approval controlled. The legislature and governor several years ago changed the law, and it's now time of application. So whatever ordinances you have on the books dealing with development, citing of businesses, etc., are defined by the time of application. If you have no application out there, no ordinance that deals with it, what happens is whoever applies, the absence of an ordinance would permit them to do whatever they want to do in terms of putting in a recreational marijuana site. What this is doing, this ordinance is doing, is it's basically putting a brake on recreational marijuana, not medical marijuana. And what it's doing, it's allowing the governing body, the city of Summit, to see what happens with the legislature in terms of the law that's going to be passed sometime next year. And we can always amend this, change it, etc. But it protects the city so that you guys can have a more orderly fashion in determining what the zoning regarding recreational marijuana, if it's going to be permitted, where it will be cited, how it will be done, and it'll be in accordance with the state law. We don't know if the state law might obviate all local ordinances. It might say that they're the only body that can issue sites, etc. As you know, when they did the medical marijuana, there was very strict laws dealing with how medical marijuana dispensaries were allocated. And that could be what happens to the recreational marijuana dispensaries. But what this is doing is just taking a proactive measure to so that people don't make applications, and then we're dealing with applications that were made where we have no flexibility on behalf of the city to regulate how this is going to be zoned. So our recommendation is that you pass this ordinance this evening. Again, medical marijuana dispensaries are permitted within Summit. This does not outlaw those whatsoever. This prohibits recreational. And then when the legislation is passed and signed into law, we can then evaluate that and make whatever changes are necessary to this ordinance based on the mandates of the governor and the state legislature.
The one follow-up I would make to that I think helps the public are what other industries do we ban in Summit?
I can answer that. You know, there are plenty of legal things. We don't have adult entertainment. We don't have drive-in. We don't have like fast food drive-ins. We don't have strip malls. There are a lot of things in our zoning ordinance, a lot of things that are legal that, you know, that we have made a determination at some point in our zoning that it's not consistent with the character of our community. And this is, you know, this is sort of what we talk about, you know, the character of our community. It's not an accident that our community looks the way it does.
Agreed. And that is why the one thing that I do want us as a council to pay attention to is that we be very careful to confuse the character of the users as somehow not appealing to Summit.
I don't think anyone has said.
And I want to make sure that is plain.
Please do not put those words in our mouths, because I think we've all been very clear that this is not a moral decision. This is not a decision on how we feel about cannabis. This is a decision to preserve the zoning of our community until we have enough information to, you know, to make a reasoned decision with members of the community. This is putting a break on a decision because we can't make a decision rationally because we don't yet have all the information.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments from members of council? Okay, so I'm going to close this hearing and move on to, I guess we have two ordinances for final consideration. Madam Clerk, could you please read the first one?
Ordinance 20-3224, an ordinance to repeal and replace Chapter 35 of the General Code of the City of Summit to establish the 2020 Development Regulations Ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And Councilmember Little?
Thank you, Council President. As we had the hearing earlier tonight, seems like a lot earlier at this point, but on the DRO, I ask that we approve this ordinance.
I second it.
Okay. Madam Clerk, we need a roll call, correct?
Yes. Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Hairston?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. Naidu?
Aye.
Mr. O'Sullivan?
Aye.
Mr. Vartan?
Aye.
President Fox?
Aye. Okay, the motion carries. Moving on to our second ordinance for final consideration, Madam Clerk.
Ordinance number 20-3225, an ordinance amending and supplementing the Code of the City of Summit, Chapter 35, Development Regulations Ordinance, Article 7, Definitions, subsection 35-7.2, to add the definition of medical marijuana dispensary, and Article 9, General Provisions, subsection 35-9.2, prohibited uses.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilmember Naidu.
As per our hearing that we just had, I'd like to ask that we approve this ordinance.
I second.
A roll call, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Hairston?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. Naidu?
Aye.
Mr. O'Sullivan?
Aye.
Mr. Vartan?
Nay.
President Fox?
Aye. Okay, the motion carries. Moving on, we have several ordinances for introduction. Madam Clerk, could you read the first finance ordinance, please?
Yes. ID number 7529, an ordinance authorizing emergency appropriations pursuant to NJSA 40A:4-53.
Thank you. Councilmember Vartan.
Thank you, Council President. This ordinance declares a COVID-19 special emergency, authorizing an emergency appropriation in the amount of $850,000 for the parking utility to offset lost revenue. Due to the impact of COVID-19, the state of New Jersey's Division of Local Government Services has allowed a special emergency in order to offset lost revenue. This allows the city to raise the lost revenue over the course of 5 years, rather than apply the lost revenue in its entirety from the fund balance in the budget year 2021. It's no surprise that Summit's parking utility was hit hard. In the amended budget that was adopted in June, our finance team predicted almost this exact financial situation for the parking utility. To help lessen the burden of the pandemic on businesses and residents, the council waived all parking fees from April to July. When parking fees were reimposed, parking revenue in the downtown was mostly restored, but commuter parking demand remains extremely low. And though the utility will have significantly lower operating costs, we will still have the deficit projected earlier in the year. If the city does not exercise this option, the fund balance next year would be almost completely depleted and the utility would no longer be self-liquidating. From a practical standpoint, starting in budget year 2022, the utility's budget will have a line item of $170,000 a year for the following 5 years to fund this appropriation. I want to assure my esteemed colleagues and everyone watching at home that the Finance Committee, City Administrator, CFO, and our City Auditor all believe that exercising this option is the most responsible course of action. The hearing for this ordinance will be held at the Common Council meeting on December 15th, 2020. I move to introduce this ordinance.
I second.
Okay. All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, could I have a roll call, please?
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Hairston?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. Naidu?
Aye.
Mr. O'Sullivan?
Aye.
Mr. Vartan?
Aye.
President Fox?
Aye. Motion carries, and we'll have the hearing on December 15th. Moving on to the second finance resolution for ordinance for introduction. Madam Clerk?
ID number 7556, an ordinance amending an ordinance establishing a procedure in connection with the payment of bills and claims against the City of Summit.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Councilmember Vartan?
Thank you, Council President. This ordinance revises the city's procedure for payment of bills in order to comply with laws about prompt payment. Previously, bills and claims must have been presented to the city treasurer for consideration for payment by the Friday immediately prior to a council meeting. This ordinance updates that time frame, meaning bills and claims must be presented by close of business 5 days before the council meeting. The hearing for this ordinance will also be held at the Common Council meeting on December 15th. I move to introduce this ordinance.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Hairston?
Aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. Naidu?
Aye.
Mr. O'Sullivan?
Aye.
Mr. Vartan?
Aye.
President Fox?
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Moving on, we have one more ordinance for introduction, community programs and parking services. Madam Clerk?
ID number 7555, an ordinance amending the code, Chapter 7, Traffic, Section 7-8, Parking, subsection 7-8.6, all night parking prohibited, and 7-25, regulations for the movement and the parking of traffic on municipal property and Board of Education property, and subsection 7-25.4, regulations.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Council President. This ordinance for introduction will amend our parking rules to allow for overnight permitted parking on specific named municipal streets for people who live in dwellings with 10 or more units. To be clear, this ordinance will not allow for overnight parking on the street if you live on a county or state road. All other night parking will remain prohibited throughout the city except for these named streets with multiple dwelling units that have 10 or more units. The ordinance will also increase the quarterly price for overnight parking. These changes are set to go into effect on January 1st, 2021, and I move this ordinance for introduction.
I enthusiastically second.
Okay, could we have a roll call, please, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Ms. Hairston?
I enthusiastically aye.
Ms. Little?
Aye.
Mr. Naidu?
Aye.
Mr. O'Sullivan?
Aye.
Mr. Vartan?
Aye.
President Fox?
Aye. Motion enthusiastically carries. And we'll have a hearing again December 15th. So thank you. So moving on to resolutions. We have a few finance resolutions. Councilmember Vartan.
Yes, thank you, Council President. This resolution is number 7527. It's related to the ordinance introduced moments ago to establish the COVID-19 special emergency for the parking utility. This ordinance does two things. It certifies that the loss of revenue is directly attributable to the pandemic, and it authorizes the Chief Financial Officer, Tammy Baldwin, to submit the application to the Division of Local Government Services. I move to adopt this resolution.
Second.
Are there any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? I see one hand, but I'm not sure. Jamie Van Sciver, did you have a comment on this?
No, I was looking to speak about cannabis. Thank you.
We're done with cannabis, sorry. Okay.
Well,
Okay, so, all right. So are there any comments from members of council? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on. Finance number 2, Councilmember Vartan.
Thank you, Council President. This is resolution ID number 7553. This resolution authorizes the schedule of school tax levy payments. As a reminder to all watching, the city collects the school taxes and then pays the Board of Education $5,572,720 on the first business day of each month. The total amount of the levy from January to June of 2021 is $33,436,320. I move to adopt this resolution.
Second.
Are there any comments from members of council? Comments from members of the public? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to finance number 3. Go ahead, Councilmember Vartan.
Thank you, Council President. This is ID number 7554. This resolution authorizes 2021 municipal, sewer, parking, and school debt service payments. I move to adopt this resolution.
Second.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to the final finance resolution. Councilmember Vartan.
Thank you, Council President. This resolution is ID number 7532. This resolution authorizes a professional services agreement with the law firm of DeFrancesco, Bateman, Kunzman, Davis, Learer, and Flaum to be the city's tax appeal counsel for 2021. The amount of this contract is not to exceed $140,000. This firm is the city's current tax appeal counsel. They're doing a great job, and there is no increase in cost over last year. I move to adopt this resolution.
Second.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so moving on, we have one resolution from Community Programs and Parking Services. Councilmember O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Council President. This is ID number 7546 to authorize a month-to-month contract extension with Lyft for dynamic ride-sharing services from December 3rd, 2020 to December 2nd, 2021, not to exceed $6,600. Because of the COVID pandemic, we have seen dramatic decreases in the number of rides in our Lyft program. With the contract due to expire on December 2nd, and with no option years left, the best approach to keeping our relationship with Lyft going is entering into a month-to-month agreement for 2021 with costs not to exceed $6,600. This does a few things for us. It provides a valuable service at minimal cost. It gives our parking services some budget relief, and it allows us to monitor the number of rides on a monthly basis. As the recovery from the pandemic begins next year, and we see increased Lyft rides and costs approach $6,600, we will have the opportunity for another RFP for rideshare services. I move this resolution.
I second.
Are there any comments from members of council? Councilmember Vartan.
Thank you, Council President, and thank you, Councilman O'Sullivan, for the informative introduction. I just wanted to add a couple of things. From my view, extending this contract month to month makes sense for two reasons. First is obviously the ride sharing program was originally meant to alleviate some of the demand for parking by offering an option to commuters or employees to access the train station or the downtown without taking up a parking space. So there is ample parking at any given time right now, but there are still people using the program, which means that we are helping for people who may not have the transportation to get to work. Second, this is an example of how we need to balance managing the crisis right now while leading for the future of the city. We could let this contract lapse and we could save a couple $100s or $500 a month, but people will start to return to work, parking demand will rise, and parking stock will decrease as we begin the Firehouse project, as we begin renovating Broad Street West. And whether it's 6 months, a year, or longer, we will want this program back, and we would want to already have it in place while we're going through the RFP process. So I'm very supportive of keeping this running in the short term so that we will benefit from it again in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Naidu, did you have a question?
No, I was going to echo, I think, what Councilman Vartan said. I think it's a good way of doing it, and I think it's a good cost saving in the immediate, but it's a well played for a long-term outlook.
Agreed. Any other comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on, we have 3 safety and health resolutions. Councilmember Hairston, would you like to take the first one, please?
Yes, thank you, Council President. I am pleased to present the resolution ID 7476 to appoint Police Officer Jimena Jaramillo to the position of probationary police officer with an effective date on or about January 4th. This vacancy is for the position that was previously declared on March 10th, 2020, during a regular meeting of the Common Council, and so adopted on Resolution 39242. Jimena Jaramillo has met all the requirements for this appointment as per city ordinance and has successfully completed the background investigation and all psychological, medical, and drug screening exams as required. I am overjoyed to introduce this resolution and would like for my fellow councilwoman and also mayor to speak specifically to this excellent hire by our police chief.
Go ahead. Mayor, would you like to go ahead and say something?
Sure. I was going to talk about, it was a great process. We were tremendously impressed by her, but I would like to give a brief biography of Ms. Jaramillo. So Officer Jimena Jaramillo was born in Colombia. She and her parents immigrated to the United States when she was a middle school student. Initially settling in Morristown, New Jersey, her family moved to Summit at the start of her freshman year of high school. Officer Jaramillo graduated from Summit High School class of 2012. Upon completion of high school, Officer Jaramillo attended Fairleigh Dickinson University and graduated, majoring in criminology and minoring in forensics and psychology. Officer Jaramillo joined the Summit Police Auxiliaries in May 2017. She has participated in numerous departmental and City of Summit events while fulfilling this role, including providing safety to attendees as a traffic officer for different race events or parades in town, Summit's National Night Out event, and the Concert and Movie in the Park series, to name a few. While pursuing a career in law enforcement, Officer Jaramillo has been involved in different fields of work in and around the city of Summit, involving hospitality, clerical work, and private security. She is very eager to begin her career serving and protecting the citizens of this great town and is looking forward to a memorable and successful career with the Summit Police Department. I was tremendously impressed with her during our interview, and she felt that while she grew up from middle school in Morristown, and she was annoyed with her parents for moving her from Morristown to Summit. She said she will be thankful till the day she dies for her parents for bringing her here, because this is her home. And she loved and the students and the teachers that she got to know at Summit High School, and moved her in the direction where she is. So she's smart and bright, and I am grateful to the chief for listening to us when we have all been saying we need to, increase the diversity on the police force, and go women. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Little.
I just quickly want to echo what was already said about Officer Jaramillo. We were just so impressed with her. And while I agree that I was overjoyed to see someone with diversity, both a woman, Spanish speaking, grew up in Summit, like so many, she filled so many of our boxes, but even if she hadn't, she was just the most impressive candidate that we interviewed. She was poised, smart, compassionate. She answered all the questions exactly as you would wish from a candidate. And she was just incredibly impressive, and we are very excited to have her join the force. I think it's going to be a benefit to all the residents of Summit. You're all going to feel the same way we do when you meet her.
Terrific. Thank you, Councilmember Little. Chief Bartolotti, is there anything you want to add?
I just echo what everybody said. Jimena has been a valuable part of our organization as an auxiliary officer for just over 3 years now. And the community and the council will find that in the role of police officer, she will be even more so in that capacity, and a great asset to the community. And I just want to thank my safety committee for their participation in those interviews and that hiring process, and their support in this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to meeting her. So now let's have the vote. Unless there are any other comments from any other members of council?
I don't think I let Councilmember Little second.
Oh, okay.
I did second.
Okay.
I already seconded, but yes, I heartily second.
Okay, so let's go ahead with the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, it's official. So we look forward to meeting Officer Jaramillo. Moving on to safety and health number 2, Councilmember Hairston.
Thank you, Council President. The next resolution is ID 7551 to authorize the emergency purchase of one 2020 Ford Utility Police Interceptor at the cost of $32,940. And this resolution is to replace 3 police vehicles that were declared a total loss by the city's insurance carrier. And for the public and the council, we are choosing another vendor, and we're buying it from Coke 33 Ford as opposed to the current state contractor, because of the amount of time that it will take for this vendor to make the vehicle available to us. They have quoted us a price of $32,940 versus $31,461.60. However, the time frame difference is it is available immediately to us, whereas we would have to wait 4 to 5 months from the winter Ford who we typically use. And so for those reasons, I ask that we approve this resolution. And I also want to mention that it will be covered by our insurance settlement.
Councilmember Little.
I second.
Okay, any comments from members of council? Councilmember Vartan.
Thank you, Council President. Just again, this police vehicle is meant to replace one of the ones that were totaled in response to stolen vehicles. And as a result of that, now we have to get another vehicle. But more importantly, 2 police officers were seriously hurt. So if you support the Summit Police Department, you should really lock your car. And that's all I want to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, last safety and health resolution, Councilmember Hairston.
Thank you, Council President. This resolution is ID 7550 to amend the professional services agreement for the new fire headquarters architectural design services Phase 2 construction documents. There's going to be an additional fee of $52,415.40. And this resolution is to include services for radiant heat, number 2 value engineering, number 3 reimbursable allowances for the new fire headquarters project from the firm Lee Erickson and Wilcox Architects. So I introduced this. Okay.
Okay. Any comments from members of council? Councilmember Little.
I just wanted to clarify that it's for the drawings for the specs for radiant heat. At a time when the firehouse first came when the plans were first drawn up for the firehouse, it was over budget, if you'll recall, and we asked the fire department to go back and do some value engineering, take a number of items out. One of the items that was taken out was radiant heat for the flooring, and we asked that it be put in as a separate item that could be bid on when we put it out to bid, so that we can make a determination at that time, since that's an item that costs more when you're building, but also saves costs in the long run. So we wanted to be able to evaluate it separately and see whether it made sense to do. So it's to do the extra drawings and the extra specs for that, as well as the extra drawings and architectural plans that were needed for the reductions for the value engineering that was done to bring it under budget.
Thank you, Councilmember Little. Any other comments from members of council? Councilmember Naidoo.
Thank you, Council President. I'm going to support this this resolution because, as Councilwoman Little and Councilwoman Hairston pointed out, this is for expenses that were incurred in relation to requests for work that we had requested through our fire department, and the fire department had requested from a consultant, and we're going to request work. People expect to be paid for that work that we're requesting from them. So I understand that. Going forward, I think one of the next steps in this process, of course, is to seek bids for the construction of the fire station. And I think my position has been clear from virtually the day of joint council about the fire station. I know different people have different views sometimes about this, which is that my view of a new fire station is tied to how much progress we make with respect to Broad Street redevelopment west, and that both are intertwined and have always been in my head. And so as long as we make progress on Broad Street West, we can proceed, from my perspective, proceed forward with a new fire station. But we have to be cognizant that at least for me, it is certainly an intertwined issue that needs to move forward in a consistent manner. Let's put it that way. Thank you.
You, Councilmember Naidoo. Any other comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And now we have 3 capital projects resolutions. Councilmember Little.
Thank you, Council President. The first capital projects resolution is number 7552, and it's to authorize expenditures from our Affordable Housing Trust Fund for affordability assistance for our 31 Russell Place property. This is affordability assistance for the property at 31 Russell Place that was the off-site affordable housing obligation for the development of the condominiums on Franklin Place. As you'll note, that that was built off-site and not at that development. That property was taken over by the Housing Authority, And since that property does not qualify for subsidy assistance from the from HUD, we have valued out a 30-year cash flow analysis for affordability assistance for that property. We do have an obligation under our settlement agreement to provide affordability assistance, so that helps with that obligation, as well as making this property work for the affordable housing in our city. So I ask that we approve this ordinance.
I second it.
Councilmember Little, can you explain to me why the property does not qualify for affordability assistance from HUD? Is it because it's an off-site facility?
I am
sorry to put you on the spot.
I am not sure. I don't know if I know the answer to that. I wonder if Aaron Traeger or Matt Delore is on the call and can answer. I can't remember exactly why it didn't qualify for property assistance. Councilmember Naidu, do you remember?
Well, actually, I think if Aaron can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe instead of, it's called affordability assistance, but I believe this is for a maintenance obligation that we have because it's been taken over by the housing authority. Is that right, Aaron?
That is correct for that. I don't know the full history. I'm still getting caught up to speed. I could ask Matt Delore and get back to you, but it is for the ongoing maintenance moving forward. So
okay,
why it might not qualify, I'm not sure at this time.
Thank you. I guess my concern is I'm not really supportive of off-site housing. I think when we do affordable housing, we should be doing it as inclusive to whatever the development is, and particularly if it means that we're accruing extra costs. You know, it's just a concern I had if that's what triggered it. But obviously, that's something we'll follow up on in the future. The maintenance part of it is certainly part of it, and that was discussed at Housing Authority meetings, that the Housing Authority is taking this over on behalf of the city, and there's maintenance that needs to be done on the property, and those costs also should be incurred by the Housing Authority, clearly. So we're doing that. We also do have an obligation under the settlement to provide this type of funding. So it it enables us to have affordable housing. We, as a council, we have decided this settlement agreement was done prior to this council. And as the council, this current council, we've decided that we are not in favor of doing offsite housing. We've denied those applications and have required developers to either provide it in the site where they are building or in close proximity. So I would expect that we wouldn't see more of these in the future. In Matt Delore's memo accompanying this, he also stated that the property is not eligible for HUD subsidy, and that may be a separate issue. It might be the maintenance issue, and he's not here on the call to clarify that. But my understanding was it was more on maintenance, but it looks like there's some portion of it that's also going to offset the lack of a HUD subsidy, and I don't know the reason for that. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any other comments from members of council? Comments from members of the public? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Councilmember Little, capital projects number 2.
Thank you, Council President. Just scrolling down to it. I apologize, I was off there. It's a very long one. This is Capital Projects Resolution number 7548, which is to declare a vacancy in the Department of Community Services and the Division of Public Works.
Actually, it's the second one, 7557, grant application.
Forgive me one. Got it. Sorry, my iPad was acting up and not letting me click on the individual resolutions. So it's resolution number 7557, which is to authorize grant application and acceptance for CDBG year 47. And this is for the Community Development block grant application, and this year we are putting in an application for the senior connection bus for the community programs for a total of $4,000, and the Share the Fun Club also through community programs for $10,000. And I ask that we approve this resolution.
I second it.
Any comments from members of council? Any comments from members of the public? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, last capital projects. Councilmember Little.
Thank you, Council President. This is Capital Projects Resolution number 7548. It's to declare a vacancy in the Department of Community Services, Division of Public Works, and the Municipal Disposal Area Unit. And this is a vacancy that has risen from the resolution that was passed at the last council meeting of the promotion of Michael Caputo. And so this would be to fill the vacancy left by his promotion. And I ask that we approve this resolution.
Seconded.
Any comments from members of council? Comments from members of the public? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we're now on to the consent agenda. Unless anyone has any comments they'd like to make or on any of the items in the consent agenda, we'll take this as a whole. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're moving on to council members' comments and new business. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to comment on? Councilmember Naidu.
Thank you, Council President. As you all know, I am the liaison to the Board of Health. And there recently, one of the members of the Board of Health passed away. I think some of you may know him more personally as a family doctor, but Dr. Herman Kairam passed away just so suddenly, because we actually had a Board of Health meeting only, not this past Monday, but the Monday just before Thanksgiving. And he participated in that meeting. And it's just shocking that he's gone. But it is because of volunteers such as him that make Summit the city that it is. And so we honor his memory and his service, I'm sure on behalf of all of us, to the city of Summit. And we wish condolences to his family and to his 3 children. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Naidu. Are there any other comments that anyone would like to make? Okay. All right, hearing none. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you,
Good
everyone.
night.